Please welcome to New Game Plus TV live on Twitch, but you might be joining us on C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts, provided they're going out to those platforms properly. Fingers crossed. My name's Cringe. I'm joined this week by Jason and Kart. How you guys going?
Yep. Another day in paradise here in Melbourne.
I got a haircut, which is sick. I'm really happy that I can do
nice,
that.
Yeah. 25 kilometers is nice. I'm not going to lie. It's been nice convertible weather. So suddenly it's like, I do need groceries, but I'm probably not just going to go to the one right next door. I'll go to the one just a little bit further away, enjoy a bit of the sunshine, but then I got sunburnt, which is the curse of the Irish.
I like how we're back at that point where people look at you funny while you're wearing a mask. So it's a sign that things are sort of going back to normal.
Look, it's a bit brutal, especially in the shopping centres. Like, people
are saying people who aren't wearing, like, if someone gets on the tram or something, because I've had people when I get on, like, say the 96 or something, people will get on without a mask, and I'm like, maybe you lost. Like, can I help you?
The one thing they did clarify, just to be clear, they did clarify you are allowed to wear neck gaiters as long as they're sealed off the top and they're sealed off the bottom. That's the only exception to the scarf rule, which is always the one that I always thought was weird, because I'm like, if they're sealed off at the top, sealed off at the bottom, then it's as good as a mask, because like it's going to be multiple. Doesn't matter.
I mean, looser scarves I kind of get, but
no, look, scarves and bandanas and like, because you see people like hold these scarves and it's like, okay, cool, just shoot it out in like a refined mist. It's like, when you like, if you got like bad teeth, like people I know, you can squirt like water out like a particular point of your teeth because it's like compressed. It's like that.
Some people will probably take it to extremes though. Like they might consider a stole a scarf, and that thing is like a really thin piece of fabric. So there's that.
Yeah. For sure. But no, and I mean, that's the reason they did it. But look, that's enough mask talk. It's a video game. It's New Game Plus, not New Mask Plus. So
I mean, we are in Melbourne, and I mean, we're looking forward to eventually getting back into a studio, but a haircut is a good first step. So
I mean, I don't know about Cardi, but I'm at that point now where I don't even think I can do it properly. Like I need one real bad.
Oh, boo.
I'm mid shoulder blades at the moment. No, it's fine, but mine wasn't set for it. Like I didn't get mine cut for length. I got mine cut for like shoulder length, and now it's mid shoulder blades. It's not good. Doesn't matter.
Coming up on the show, Jason, you want to talk about Monster Hunter World and like the expansions, basically, like that it's still a really, really good game that you should go out and buy.
So it's literally the last monster. So this was the last major content update. So Fatalis was the last big one that they put effort into, pageantry, cutscenes, like story elements. It's the last canon monster, if you will, for Monster Hunter World. And yeah, I don't know. We finally beat it the other night on stream, and I still think that even if you were to come in at this late stage, it incentivizes people to help you out. Like, so I still think it's a really good game if you are coming into it late, and it's like you see, it's on special all the time. I still think it's worth it. So that's, I figured I just want to do a bit of a kind of a debrief, if you will, like a debrief on the game and kind of what it's accomplished and what it's done.
I mean, if you want more Monster Hunter, you can also check out the Twitch most nights, because we're doing Mon Hun.
Because we've beaten Fatalis, I'm going to do Tuesday nights occasionally. I know Cardi, I mentioned you about grinding up and stuff, seeing if we can get to past 100. Because once you got that 100, once you got the Nergi quest, you need that for certain armors and stuff. Anyway, I'm going full Monster Hunter nerd. No, at the moment the answer is actually no, believe it or not, because we killed Fatalis the other night. So yeah,
it's all downhill from here. Kart, you've been playing. It's called Going Under.
Yes, so I've been playing a couple of indie titles, just been kind of jumping back and forth, but Going Under is a game that has resonated with me for the past couple of weeks. I've been following its development for quite some time, and finally came out, I think either the start of this month or late last month. So I've had a fair amount of intimate time with it, and I'm very excited to, wax lyrical about it later in the show.
Exciting stuff. Before we get into any of that, though, let's get into first news story of the week. 2K has added unskippable ads into NBA 2K21 pre-game loading screens. Deviver have recorded unskippable ads for the Oculus Quest 2. They now appear inside the PS4, Xbox One, and Windows PC versions of the game. They're attached to a pre-game video called My Team Season 2 Episode 7 that's auto-started in a loading screen that takes longer than the ad runs, even on a PC running from an SSD. Back in September, EA received so much criticism for adding in-game ads to UFC 4 and its replays that they actually removed them shortly after. Quote, "It is abundantly clear from your feedback that integrating ads into the replay and overlay experience is not welcome," end quote, EA said at the time. "The advertisements have been disabled by the team, and we apologize for any disruption to gameplay that players may have experienced." Who would have guessed that?
Look,
adding ads to a full-price game, people don't like that. What?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. If it's one of those, it's in the background, or it's like remember, the funniest one was when Burnout had THC ads, and it's like that's a bit of a monk ass right there. But Capcom did it with some. Street Fighter, and they removed them real quick because it was the Uniqlo ads for all the Uniqlo Street Fighter tops.
Oh,
and
they
it's
had
like
opt-out options at least.
No, they not at the start. They didn't. You had to cop them, and then now you can just turn them off. And now they advertise Capcom Cup, which I'm a bit more okay with because it's like, hey, here's an opportunity to play our video game. I don't really begrudge them that, but yeah, no, I mean. 2K have been the under the radar scumbags for a while now. Like, let's be real. Like, all the houses are gone. I think actually no, Sam House is still at Rockstar. Because they make too much money off GTA Online, and obviously they're starting to hamper what games they're making and stuff based on the ongoing popularity and success of GTA Online. When even EA goes, cool, we're going to react, we're just going to take the pedal off that one, and 2K just plows ahead. That's an awful.
Yeah, I think it's largely contextual on what's considered right and what's considered wrong. Because, again, as you mentioned before, if it's something like just a flat texture advertising on a billboard or even
in
like
a stadium or something,
it makes sense because you're creating that atmosphere of you're playing in a stadium, you're playing in on a basketball court, for example.
Yeah.
But actively having something that invasive, I can understand why so many people are cranky about it because you've paid $90 for
or for next gen version,
whatever X amount for the next gen version, completely related. You paid that much for this kind of game for whatever it is, escapism or immersion or anything like that. And yeah, you've got you have this stuff just peddled at you and shoved down your throat, and you're like. Apparently, you can switch it off, or I'm not too sure if that's the option where you can switch off the 2K TV segments.
I don't think you can at the moment.
Oh, you can't at the moment. Okay, that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
And you just have that shit shoved in your face the entire time, and you just sit there going man, why did I do this? I want to play some basketball and not have to sit there for a 30, 60-second ad. That hasn't
been it is funny because you would think sports games of all games would be the ones that would be
exactly
acceptable, but you just can't take the piss. If you had an AFL game and it was in the role of the stadium, you'd go, look, all right. If they said we'll charge you $70 for the game, but we got to run ads, I think people take the $70. If they're unintrusive in the background, it's the same with Google services. If Google said, I technically do pay them to use their services as opposed to necessarily them stealing all my info. I'd do that. Their services have always been pretty good. Google Drive's fine. I use Gmail as a main mail account.
I think they take the info that you give them through G Suite. If you pay for G Suite, they don't take that. No, they don't.
It doesn't affect your AdSense record, but I'm sure it does. I mean, they all lie about it anyway. Why would you trust Google or Facebook? I mean, isn't Google just about to cop an antitrust suit? So,
I think they're trying to get off on grounds of immersion because with sports games, because it is such a massively kind of casually saturated audience, they can sit there and go, oh, it's no different than watching it on TV. You're going to have ads thrown at your face all the time. But if we use old iPhone games or iOS and Android games as a barometer of you port, there were many iPhone games that had a free version which would bombard you with ads, and then you could pay $5.
Pay you $5.
Have those ads removed completely. And now they're slowly starting to try to erode that, and they're starting with the most casual of audiences, specifically sports games.
For sure. I agree 100%. And I think that's where they're starting to do the math on and go, even if 50% of our audience paid for ads, we still make more money on the ads, so we're just going to keep doing that. It's even the stream, the second the streaming services start doing ads, that's when you're going to be in that's when we're back to cable days, boys.
Isn't it?
Well, that's what Foxtel is. Foxtel originally didn't have ads. I'm old enough to remember when Cardi would have been young. Cart's come up with some random comedy channel references that there's no way he knew unless he watched it at 5 years old. But that never used to have ads, and then suddenly, just a couple. And then they made SBS OBS get ads. And so as soon as the stream services do it, the first one that doesn't, like the one remaining holdout that doesn't do ads, and it's bad enough Netflix sometimes with the autoplay trailers, but at least you can turn it off. The second they start doing ads, cool. I'll see what my mate Vadim's doing over in Vladivostok to see if he can get me the same show. It's what happens.
Do the old DNS trick that absolutely no one in Australia has ever done.
That was always the point, though.
Never ever.
That was the point of like the internet, as well as fringe mediums like video games were that form of escapism initially from commercial television and corporate meddlings, and now we're back to square one.
Well, I mean, it's always kind of been there in some capacity, right? Like whether it's sort of more subtle, I'd say more subtle, but product placement like Cup Noodle in Final Fantasy 15. But I mean, I remember Red Bull in Wipeout 2097, I think it was called.
Yeah.
It's not new, but it's gross that it's in. It's so overbearing inside.
It depends. It depends on what it is. Again, it's a situational thing of like, if you have billboards in Burnout Paradise, like who cares? It's advertising.
Exactly. Yeah, who cares?
Like you see that stuff on billboards, so it makes it like it establishes that atmosphere of where you are or what you're doing in the game. But as soon as you have ads that are just being thrown at you with no relevance to what it is, to what the source material is in the first place, you got problems.
Yeah, I know, you got to remember, you brought up Final Fantasy. Japan's a hard one. Japan is such a hard one to nail down on it, because when they do it, they meme hard. Like it's not just here's bleh. Usually it's not just here's bleh.
It's a side quest of its own or whatever.
Like USJ crossovers for Monster Hunter and
Ikinari Steak in Judgment.
Ikinari Steak, I mean, Judgment's the hardest one because it's like everything is a licensed product. It is like Beam Suntory. Ikinari Steak, like Pepper Lunch People.
Didn't Galea's post a video about Don Quixote?
Yeah, that was Galea, and that's like full donkey. Like you walk in there, and it's in a similar spot to where it is on the Kabukicho Strip.
Yeah,
it's a lot of effort though. Like compared to the cynicism that is, let's just drop an ad on here.
Yeah, exactly.
Ad compared to that, compared to a whole side quest line or like actual products that give you some sort of benefit in the game, like health boosts or heat boosts.
Yeah.
It's a completely different argument.
I'll say this one last thing, and then I guess we can move on to the next point. The difference I would say with the Yakuza series is you can tell that every single one of those brands that they approach, there's not a marketing team going out. That's fucking Nagoshi going, man, I love Ikinari Steak. I wonder if we can get the guy from Ikinari Steak to show up in Judgment, and we'll 3D model him and we'll render him, and we'll talk about how he's a nice guy on the video game that I'm making. And to me, at that point, it borderline becomes like an artist's choice.
That's so wholesome,
that's an artist. Like he's deciding this is the brand that I want to extol the virtues of. And like as much as an ad, it's like, well, at least he's the one doing it. It's not like it's cynical marketing after the fact, or it's like, oh, here, have an ad for some crap. I don't know, man. Like the Japanese are a hard one to pin on that because they're just so sold to. They're so heavily sold to that they've had to be smart about it. They've led the way on that thing. So
like when you see trains, like JR trains, and it's got the screens in there and just constantly ads running, and you're like, no one's paying attention. Everyone's just hitting their phone. So it's a different level. But we will move on. Sony can now record voice chat audio, which users can submit to the company for moderation review. The ability to do so was added as part of a PS4 firmware update. In a PlayStation blog post, Sony said voice chat recording for moderation is a feature that will be available on PS5 when it launches and will enable users to record their voice chats on PS5 and submit them for moderation review. The pop-up you're seeing on PS4 right now is to let you know that when you participate in a chat with a PS5 user after launch, they may submit those recordings from their PS5 console to Sony Interactive Entertainment. Catherine Jensen, Sony Interactive Entertainment's Vice President for Global Consumer Experience, later clarified on the PlayStation blog that only the most recent 5 minutes of a voice chat will be available for a player. To a player to use for this reporting function.
My first point is, all I'd like to say is that all of these fake renders that they just did then, with all the geometric shapes,
put in it.
No, but that looks better than the actual PlayStation 5.
It does.
If they'd stuck with that, it would have been like, oh, cool. It's like the edgy, competitor to the straightforward protagonist that is the Xbox Series X. You know what I mean? Like that would be the Sasuke. Like all that looked way better than the stupid it looks like a shitty tower in like Kuala Lumpur or something.
I loved all of the memes about the PS5. I think my favorite one was like Cloud holding the PS5 as part of dumb stuff like that I love. But yeah, Sony just can't catch a break. They keep doing it to themselves. And Jason, who would have guessed? Again, which week are we going to have a story about Sony that's positive?
Well, both podcasts, all I do is shit on Sony, but they're making it so easy at the moment. Like, they are just idiot. We are back to full penis thumb. PS3, the third place. We're back to classic Sony. We're back to classic ad-driven film Gronk Sony. And it's sad because, like, you know, I mean, yeah, it's making Microsoft earn it by buying out Bethesda, by spending all this money on their experiences and stuff. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't hold high hopes for Sony. They'll coast a wave a little bit. I think in the first few years, they'll still have the momentum coming in from PS4. But, I mean, that momentum, not that it's died off, because they still sold PS4 basically at full price the whole length of its lifespan. But I think as it comes down towards, you know, after that first year or two, and after people start to see the different value propositions, I wonder where we'll sit with the console war, if you will, when we get our Switch Pros. Hey Jack.
I'm more disappointed that, like, whatever. That's maybe we'll go into that. You don't see a big difference in the sales numbers in the first sort of year or so anyway. No. So you're not going to be like, oh man, Sony or Xbox. I mean, it was pretty easy last time because Kinect was such a car crash that
Matric was such exactly. I mean, like, it was always a combination. Matric was just the worst possible person for that. Microsoft was run by a lawyer and it was headed up by a guy who ended up working for Zynga. So that's the last person you want touching your interactive games experience. He took it for granted that people would be okay with licenses because everyone doesn't mind licenses. Like, they've just started selling, at this point, Microsoft, like, the licensed version, Office 365. You know, who cares? Like, nobody minds. And then, lo and behold, everyone turned, what the fuck is it? So, and then smart people like House and Layden just jumped on it and they said, cool, we'll take that, yoink. And then, yeah, I mean, you've got, we live in a world where Layden isn't there, Kaz isn't there, House isn't there, Kudaragi's making robots for free. Like, that's the world we live in now. Like, Ken Kudaragi's like, in my older years, I'm just going to sit around making robots. And if there's not a bigger postmodern cyberpunk Japanese story, it's like I've become a craftsman, but of cyborgs to help people. It's like, okay, yep. Like, yep, lol Japan. Well, I don't know.
He's the real life Dr. Wily now. Like, he's going to make Mega Man in a couple of years.
Cardi gets it like that. Exactly. It comes out. The first model is called Rockman, and then Capcom sue. But yeah, no, like, I don't know, man.
It's not like they're doing anything with Mega Man anyway. So
I get why Sony did this. I mean, obviously their community moderation is such a big deal at the moment. I would be surprised. I'd test a theory. When we get our PS5's cart, I'm going to send you a message and I'm going to say Tiananmen Square 1989, and I'm going to see if I get moderated for it, because, like, Sony's the China console now.
Man. Jesus.
I'm just gonna put it out there and say that they're definitely posturing towards that market. I think we've said this many times before. Sure. But I feel that a lot of these decisions that have been coming out recently, and I guess decisions that they've had to be forced to respond to, have all been very they haven't been very consumer friendly, at least the market that they have at the moment globally, in terms of Europe, in terms of Australia, in terms of the US, in terms of Japan even. I feel that they're starting to get a little bit complacent about how they own Japan. Like, they sit there and go, yeah, we can deal with it because we're a homegrown console and we'll just make sales. And they will, to a degree. But they're starting to kind of get a little too rich about it. They're like, of course we're going to win these areas. We're going to win these regions.
I agree with you, Kart, and I think that the sign that they're taking it for granted is the Maru and Butts thing. The fact that they changed Circle and X, like, that is the one cultural thing you give Japan. Like, it's ingrained in how they, like, it's like, if we said no, you know, instead of saying yes, you have to say no. So if you don't want something, you say yes, and if you do want something, you say no. Like, that's literally that message, because Maru and Butts has always, like, it's been a thing for Japan for, like, decades, if not centuries.
Well, so, it's like that. Like that area in Earthbound called Moonside, where you have to say no means yes and yes means no. And it's basically like saying a Japanese person. Now, if you like, you know, like, do you like this? And you say, like, no or yes or no. Like, it's just like kind of, it's very confusing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's just like the one thing that you probably shouldn't change because it's such a big cultural thing. They've gone and changed it, and that would be a massive slap in the face.
And they already gave you the option to change it if you wanted anyway. Like if it bothered you while you're playing your Japanese
That's
anime
true.
games,
They patched that in the PS4.
So like the argument is this: there are so many Otome games on Switch. Galgun and all those games on Switch are uncensored. Like all the weeb shit is going to Switch, and it's you want to talk about the Vita 2.0? We joke, but it's the Vita 2.0. Like all that Sony loyalty is going to start moving. The one thing that Bandai and Thing are always going to have is the fact that they've got Gundam and they've got these big titles. But I mean, Attack on Titan ran fine on Thing. Kill la Kill ran okay on Switch.
True.
Like
they're getting a lot better on their PC ports as well.
Yeah.
And I'm finding even my sensei who teaches Japanese to me is a staunch PC fan now.
Yeah.
And he's like starting to not bother with Sony consoles anymore because he's like, well, like Bandai Namco is dropping like 100% of their titles onto the PC and on Switch.
It's concurrent development now.
Why should I care about Sony anymore if they're not going to care about me? And again, all of these choices seem very like the complete opposite of user friendly. When you've also got Microsoft and Nintendo. Oh, Nintendo's negligible, but Microsoft on the other hand are going full user friendliness. They're sitting there going like, well, we care about you guys to a degree that's considered.
I still think in the grand scheme of things, it used to be people would say, I have a PC and I have a PS4 for Sony exclusives, and I still think there's still going to be an element of that going forward. Sony still have some exclusive titles that I think people will maintain that mindset for, but more and more people are going, I've got a PC and I've got a Switch. And I'm like, because Wii U made that a tough proposition. People had a 3DS, they play the one game a year they play on it, unless you were like a staunch loyalist like me buying the $6 games when they'd already announced the Switch.
Or you were me playing Fire Emblem nonstop.
Yeah, that was always that niche market, and Japan loves their handhelds, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think it's going to be a real interesting world if Nintendo do allow Microsoft to have some kind of Game Pass presence on Switch, which if you read some of their statements back and forth, you can tell that it's not quite where Microsoft want it. Like Nintendo will obviously, Ori and stuff, they've seen there's a market for Ori on Switch, there's a market for Cuphead on Switch. All that makes perfect sense.
Microsoft's end game is definitely xCloud on Switch.
Yes, for sure.
That's their end game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You beat me to it, Cardi. That was what I was going to say. I think they'll go for xCloud on Switch, and I think eventually Apple will find a way to let them do it, whether it is xCloud or whether it's something like that, because they didn't take them straight to court and try and say that, no, you have to let us sell Fortnite bucks, like V-Bucks. And so because of that, Apple might actually go, all right, we'll figure something out. But good luck to Mr. Jack. I don't think he's going to do very well. No, Mr. Tim Sweeney. It's not Jack Sweeney, it's Tim Sweeney.
I was like, what are we talking about?
No, good luck to Tim. I think his lawsuit is ill-advised at best. Ill-advised at best is probably the best, the kindest way I can describe it.
Just quick sidebar as well, because you brought up Switch Pro there.
Yes.
First of all, do you think that's the direction they're actually going to take?
I still think mid next year. I think they would have announced it already if it wasn't for COVID. And maybe they won't announce it, but they start hinting at it. There's decent hardware rumors online that they're telling developers to be ready to potentially upscale their games. Like, can they render it out at these settings instead? Yada yada yada. And it would put it in line with basically current gen, like late current gen.
PS4 or something.
That's my whole prediction in the sense that a lot of games that got delayed this year, even games like No More Heroes 3.
Yep.
For example, I have a feeling that it's going to be one of those games that will be 4K ready or whatever it is, like 2K ready once it comes out. And also like games just optimizing for performance, even if the texture work, or even if they can't make it better than it looks right now on the Switch, they can at least make sure that those games perform better as well.
My argument's always been the power dock. Like, I think NVIDIA, if anyone is pushing that kind of technology, like, AMD for just straight games, for no nonsense, is great value for money on PCs. And I mean, all the consoles are AMD, except for Nintendo Switch, which is NVIDIA. So I think if there's anyone who's going to release like a Thunderbolt-based kind of, upgraded dock or something like that, it'll be
a dock with its own dedicated graphics unit or something.
Yeah, pay $250 and it's equivalent to a 2060 or something like that. But
that's more than enough for a Switch.
That would boost it enough. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the main problem it has is its graphics more than anything else.
I'm curious to see if that USB port, because to be able to do the power dock, the idea of the power dock is that it would use something like Thunderbolt, but you would need to have the USB-C port that's currently there, like Thunderbolt enabled, whereas not all USB ports are Thunderbolt enabled. So that's the only thing where...
But I don't think, look, I think that's, again, goes back to the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite, from a firmware and a hardware perspective, cannot be docked. Like, it's not like you can even sideload a firmware in and try and, it just will not, you can't force it. Whereas with the Switch one, there's obviously the compatibility to do it. So they've obviously got some compatibility there. I could be wrong, I could be talking shit. But, I called the Switch Lite. I don't even think it was that hard to call. It was just makes sense. And Nintendo like to do that. You get the new Switch XL or something like that. It'll be some dumb fucking name because it's Nintendo. But
the new Switch,
yeah, the new Switch XL and the new Switch Normal and the new Switch XL. The new Nintendo Switch XL,
but new with like all the confetti
with Circle Pad Pro.
Circle Pad Pro. No one misses Circle Pad. Okay?
Like a third Circle Pad right in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, it's on the back. It's on the back, so you can learn to maneuver with your middle finger.
The real Vita too. It's got the full touchpad on the undercarriage.
No one liked the touchpad on the Vita.
No one did. It. But Tearaway, no, it's fine. Cool. We went. I still haven't played Tearaway, so. Cool. The first ever Twitch stream by US Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drew 439,000 peak concurrent viewers, the highest peak ever for a politician. This beat the previous peak concurrent record by a politician, 124,000 viewers on a stream from US Senator Bernie Sanders. Ocasio-Cortez's stream consisted of several hours of her playing the game Among Us alongside fellow US Representative Ilhan Omar and popular gaming streamers Jacksepticeye, HBumbleGuy, and others. According to Polygon, the commentary was largely devoid of political campaigning, but Ocasio-Cortez did frequently remind her viewers that she's doing this for a reason, to get people to vote. I'm not as read up on US politics, so I'll defer to you, Jason, on this one, because that's all News Game Plus.
I don't talk about politics. What are you talking about? I saved that for Dermy. Thank you. That's my So three prongs, I guess here. Number 3, I think it is the third biggest concurrent peak of all time. The first one is Ninja's return. No, Ninja and Drake.
Yep.
And then the other one was Shroud's return from Mixer. Shroud's return just beat it out. I'm surprised that a Democrat and a genuinely progressive Democrat did so well on a platform that increasingly over the last 6 to 12 months has become very based by their own terminology. So I'm glad that they did it. I'm sure it was if you become a mega sub, you get the feet cam, and Ben Shapiro was just sitting there with his credit card, rubbing his hands together, waiting for it. When he's not playing Genshin Impact, he's waiting for AOC feet pics. Number 3, it's just smart. It's just so smart to me. I reached out to a politician recently. I won't say the name. You can probably put it together if you go through all the different bits of media.
You can say that we're very, very excited about it potentially happening, though.
Potentially. And the first thing I pitched them was, I'm like, cool, we can do a traditional interview like we've done. We'll get, tens of thousands here and maybe 100,000 here and whatever the case may be. I said, but the one audience that I think needs to hear your message is Twitch, because Twitch is a younger demographic. It doesn't skew young. It doesn't skew YouTube young, but it does skew younger. And so, whereas YouTube is 12 and up, basically everything on YouTube is aimed at 12-year-olds until it's aimed at 40-year-olds. And the 40-year-old ones are, how do I put grease on my whippersnipper head? Yes, I looked up grease on my, shut the fuck up, but I had to because my whippersnipper was whirring. So don't worry about it. The other part of it is, I think Twitch does skew into that demographic that just old enough to be political. So again, all the based up, all the young blokes in the IT world. Sorry, Cardi, but you know the type. Who are libertarians who believe
I know exactly who you mean.
It's their first job. It's their first job that they didn't get handed to them by their dad or something like that. So suddenly they're libertarians. Why am I paying tax dollars? That's the IT libertarians. So that's a very big demographic in that. And good on it. I think it's a smart move. And I think the fact that she didn't make it like a policy thing, like she wasn't selling the Green New Deal or she wasn't selling all these things. It just puts her face out there with young people. And the problem with voting has always been that young people don't vote. Australia has a bit different, obviously, where we have compulsory voting. But even still, the old folk will show up and they'll always vote Labor or National. I say always, but we're talking the vast majority of older folk will. And so that's why they stay relevant. And that's why they're willing to send the buses to the nursing homes to get them down to the voting offices and stuff like that. But I think it's smart for her to do that. I think it's smart for her to set up potentially for basically once. I mean, Biden, I don't think Biden does 2 terms. I think Biden does 1 term. Harris maybe does 1 or 2.
Are you confident that he's going to be getting in, or?
I think, yeah. Look, I'm pretty sure he will. I'm pretty convinced that the fear this time is actually real from them. And yeah, I agree with chat that I think Biden does 1 term. I don't think he dies in the second, but I think ill health takes him away from it. Harris steps into the role. And I think she basically the next 4 years is her trying to put her platform. Now, I ain't a big fan of Harris either, but I think after that it goes on to AOC. Like AOC is really, now that Sanders is too old, like Sanders will always have a spot in a AOC cabinet kind of thing. It's one of those situations, and I don't think that's
at least
a bad
as a
idea.
consultant.
Yeah, I think it's like, it won't be like Secretary of State or anything like that, but it'll definitely be like budgetary. I think the current talk is if Biden gets in, Bernie gets budget Treasury Committee like head, Senate Treasury Committee head, and that's basically. Yeah, that's where it's a good place for him to be. And so, again, like I've said for a long time, I think if you've ever seen a hold your nose election in America, this is the hold your nose election, and vote for Biden, because it gives America four more years to get out of the tailspin they're currently in. No one internationally takes them seriously. If they don't get out of this tailspin, they got no hope. Like, good luck, Civil War II. Enjoy, boys. But I think he gives them a chance. I don't think he's the last great hope of progressive politics, because Democrats aren't progressive. Like, Democrats are Turnbull liberals. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're I mean,
the country club.
Look, before we go full bullshit, I'll make it quick. Neoliberalism is a conservative ideology. It's not a left wing ideology.
It is.
Libertarianism used to be a left wing ideology. It is definitely not anymore. The anarcho caps stole that. So it's very much, Dems are what we would consider, even right Labor. I would say Dems are right Labor. The Fitzgibbons and I said it the right way. I do normally say shit Gibbon, to be fair, of this world. He's Irish. Completely. It's fine. It doesn't matter. He's not a real person.
He can say that.
Yeah. So moral of the story is, it's a smart move by AOC. It engenders her to a young crowd who may be watching. The demographics skew young, like 18 to young, early 20s. I did find it interesting that you did mention a lot of stream. H Bomber Guy, very good streamer. Very good YouTuber. Also Philosophy Tube for those out there. But you didn't mention Pokimane, and I could have kissed you for that, Jack, because fuck Pokimane. But
like you said, other streamers, and I'm like,
other streamers. That was my favorite part. Pokimane's an other streamer.
I didn't recognize any of the names. Those 2 names were the only ones that I recognized.
Boomer Jack.
No, I think I think it's definitely an important point to kind of get enfranchised with some of the younger crowds. I mean, because thinking about this, you got to think about this as a long term. Boiling the frog slowly, kind of like, this is essentially a campaign that she might run for the next 4 to 8 years. So think about this as a long-term thing of, like, a lot of these kids who are watching Twitch now are going to grow up to be 20 to 30 something year old voters in the future. So, like, if she looks at this way of being long-term, the Republicans are definitely going to be having a lot of problems in the polls further on in future elections. So this is a really good kind of posturing for her to get involved with the younger voters.
I agree. If the Dems are serious, they get in. The first thing they do is start changing electoral boundaries back to what they kind of should be, as opposed to what they are. And increasing the number of Senate seats. And I think once they do that, they'll be in an okay spot to realistically represent America in the 20th century. Because at the moment, like, it's always kind of imbalanced. It's why Queensland is so influential in Australian voting. There's a couple of Victorians. There's seats around that are just so influential in the way the country swings based on.
The Senate's mostly Republican at this point. Right, so that would be
so they're probably
ideal for them to.
They have a 4-seat majority, and they're probably more worried about losing that than they are Trump losing. Because realistically, none of the Republicans like the fact that Trump doesn't wear the mask, like he doesn't pretend to be an upstanding citizen. So they don't like that he's not wearing the mask. So I think they
knew what they were getting themselves into, like, at the beginning of his term, but they were like,
I don't think they did. I think they were like, I think for sure that took him by. So I don't think he wanted to win it. Like, if we're being real, I don't think he wanted to win it. I think he wanted to do that. He wanted to turn around and make Trump TV, which was basically Fox News, but it was his bullshit. And they've still done that. I mean, that was always that's why he brought Steve Bannon on, because that's what Steve Bannon does. Right?
He was bright beforehand, so he
exactly. And so I don't think he wanted to win. I don't think they expected him to so deftly deal with the political dynasties. He wrote off the Clinton and Bush political dynasties in the space of 6 months. Like, if you admire him for nothing else, that's impressive. That is so impressive that he was so easily able to just dispatch with Jeb. Like, please clap. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he did away with Jeb. And I mean, and Jeb's the only reason George W. got in the first. But look, I could talk about it all day, Jack. You know better. Yeah. You know better than to do this to me. I could talk about it all day. But look, I don't think the Dems are going to be the saving grace of America, because America has a lot of structural problems they need to deal with. Like, you know, you see it on Reddit all the time. Like, yeah, like, oh, it's people treat it like it's a third world country, like it's, you know, we should be treating it like you know, some of the places like India and stuff. Like, no, but you claim to be the leader of the free world. You should be able to say, shit, I broke my leg. Do I just file bankruptcy now, or do I wait? Do you know what I mean? If I broke my leg right now, let's say I just said, even if I grabbed a hammer off the table,
do
just
it live.
Do it live on Twitter. Right? Smashed my leg and I went to the hospital. Do you know how much I'd pay? I'd pay maybe for my medicine leaving and the parking. Yeah, like, that's it. That's all I pay for. Like, it's insane to me.
The parking's where they get you.
Yeah, this is where they get you. Bloody Wilson, fucking. Can't even lock down a hotel. But they can lock down a car park.
Clooney did put
Jack's going to get me into goddamn trouble if he keeps doing this shit.
I will. Well, I mean, you were the one to bring up 1989 earlier, so I mean, you do a good enough job on your own.
True.
So let's
cap it there. Clooney did say it right, saying, you know, AOC is priming the 2028, 2032 voters, because I mean, all the based kids like to go on about how Trump plays 4D chess, but it's like, this is actually the real 4D chess that they're playing at the moment. So,
and thanks, Weary Wanderer, for the follow as well. I just saw that come up on my screen.
Thank you. All right, last one. Where is the news? There it is. Valve co-founder Gabe Newell wants to help studios relocate to the country, to New Zealand, I should probably clarify, at least temporarily. Most of the chat is under a non-disclosure agreement, but some snippets have been shared. Valve News Network reports that Newell is planning a meeting with the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to possibly discuss moving Valve and other developers into the country, escaping the trials and tribulations of designing games while working from home. Quote, because I've been going on a pro-New Zealand campaign lately, it's like the last
Choice
month.
Brew. Yeah, Choice Brew.
I'm probably going to be meeting with the Prime Minister, and one of the positions I'm going to be arguing for is that given there is something super valuable that has been created here in New Zealand due to the hard work of the population of New Zealand, there is likely a large want to temporarily relocate production teams into the country, end quote. Newell also suggested that coronavirus has knocked productivity at Valve down by 50 to 75%, and that it hadn't really come up with a solution to the big changes that working from home forces upon developers.
Thank you for picking a Dota clip, by the way.
As much as, what else does Valve make? Like, what else?
Valve don't make games anymore. They make money. That's the yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the dream. That's, you know, they don't work in game dev. They just work in just Dota. I feel like if he's like, oh, Jacinda Ardern, can you please let all of my developers into New Zealand? She'll be like, are these people going to be like the rest of Americans, not really following the rules and trying to wreak havoc and be a bit ruckus? That's the first thing that kind of came to mind, because like, America's not doing a great job.
Two things. Gabe Newell is worth personally $3 billion, something like that.
A lot of money.
Valve is worth a lot of money as well. Really, they could build a suburb. They could just go, cool, we're just going to build a suburb.
They could build a city.
And all our people are going to live here. We're getting an extension off the freeway. You guys cover the extension off the freeway. We'll make the industrial city with all the housing and all that kind of stuff. And then they still have money left over. New Zealand's had a big gaming push for a while. Like, a lot of good Australian talent went there, especially because we've had 7 years of the Libs. So you're never getting any, you know, there's not much creative arts funding to go around because the Libs don't believe in it unless you live in Hawthorne.
Outside of it,
it goes to safe liberal seats.
So you can be the the QAnon, Mr. Tim Smith himself. So I think it's a smart move. I think the tax situation will be interesting because I know Valve are very good at hiding their tax burden, and I don't think New Zealand would like that very much. Because
did they mistake that small New Zealand island for the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, no, like it's next door to Panama, isn't it? Like it's New Zealand, Panama. And so,
if they're losing so much productivity, I feel like even given, like, let's say they pay the correct amount of tax.
Yeah.
Wild thought. What a concept. They would probably still be
I
coming
could
out
use
on
it to
top.
fuel myself. Yeah.
Like they would still be coming out on top compared to where they are now.
Sure, and as a Dota player, absolutely. Like, Battle Pass ended with a whimper and not a bang. The Battle Pass is over, but we got no TI. So usually the culmination of the Battle Pass for Dota is TI. So basically, TI happens 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the Battle Pass. We know who the new hero is going to be. The winner hoists the Aegis, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's still, this household, it's a sacred event. Like, people talk about the footy grand finals. It's like, not interested in your footy, but I want to see if Team Secret can finally win a TI. So there's so for us that's kind of the mindset of it. And it's been noticeable even by Valve standards how little they've completed of what they said they were going to try and do at the start of the year. Like, they changed the way they were doing what's what I'm thinking of. They changed the way they were doing heroes and community updates and all that kind of stuff. And then come COVID, it just ground to a halt. So I don't know if you know about Valve, but it's a flat structure. There's no bosses. Basically, you work on the project. Someone comes in, like Gabe Muir comes in and says, here's a project we're doing. We're doing Alex, Half-Life Alex, right? We're doing it for VR. Who wants to do it? And they basically just assign themselves that, like, oh, I'm a programmer, I want to work on this. I'm a programmer, I want to work on that. Programmer, I want to work on that. As long as you deliver your goals, there's no structure. It's not like, okay, so you're in Team A today, and Team A is now working on Left 4 Dead 3, and you'll be programming bins for Left 4 Dead 3 for them. Don't work like that. It's a flat structure. So it's good from I guess a personality point of view from people who work there. But from a getting stuff done point of view,
not so much.
Like, it goes back to that crunch argument of like, you can't hold people accountable because it's like, well, I want off this project. I'm going over to work on Artifact, or I'm going over to work on this.
The antidote to that is Valve just is rich as hell. Like, they don't need to
Yeah. I mean, they're making 30% on every game you buy off Steam. They don't give a fuck. Like, it's like, they don't make games anymore. They make money. It's how it works. So, I don't know. I think... I think it's a good move. I think it would be great. Look, if we can get TI 10 in Auckland, I'm fucking super on board for that.
I would love to go there. Absolutely.
Mate, 3-hour trip, and I don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch matches. That'd be wonderful. But I mean, not like it's hard for me to be up at 4 a.m. to watch matches. But I think it's a smart initiative, and I'm glad that he's jumped on Jacinda Ardern's win to push that particular barrow, because it's still something, even in I don't want to say a more progressive, but in a reasonably more progressive place like New Zealand. Keep in mind, it's only got 5 million people. It's got the population of Victoria in it. You know what I mean? So it is still only a tiny place spread out across the whole island. Islands.
There are 2 of them, in case you forgot.
Islands.
I mean, that also brings a lot of job opportunities for Aussies and New Zealanders and also Southeast Asians. Considering, in Australia, we drove out all of our talents to indie studios, or we just drove out all of our divisions.
Or like the UK,
we drove them to New Zealand,
we drove them to New Zealand. Yes, that's effectively it.
So, So I don't know. I think it's a good move. I hope something comes of it. I think she'd be smart to acknowledge it. She can kind of do what she wants now. Like, they won so convincingly.
They did.
This is your chance to set an agenda for the next 10 years, 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, when you get that kind of a convincing mandate, that's when you go, okay, we've got to utilize it now. She can take a little bit to figure it out, but I think when you win that well, you get to turn around and say, it's like, when Scotty Morrison squeaks over the line with a 1-seat majority and a minority government in the Senate, it's not a mandate. It's they'll sneak what they can over the line and what they can convince.
And it's also a different kind of government. Like, for them with MMP, I forget what but their political structure, for them to win. Almost, well, I mean, it is an actual majority. That is insane, the way that it's structured, because they don't have the gerrymandering that we kind of have. I only know that word because I grew up in Queensland. The
state of Joe.
I don't want to. No, we're not. Used to be, can do Campbell.
It technically wouldn't happen in Queensland, though, considering, a certain media mogul owns majority, like 100% of the papers.
I think it's 100% up in Queensland.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, the thing is with Queensland, they also, they like to vote Lib and Nat federally, but not state at the state level because they know that Deb Frackington's just Can Do Campbell 2.0. That's a different conversation. The fact
She's going to lock your kids up, though. It's good. Curfews on adults.
That blew my mind.
The spread of a disease. It's an infringement of my rights. How dare you? But kids, get them fucking kids off the road. We're going to put them in. We're going to lock them up if they're out after 10 p.m. Get them fucking kids off the road.
Deb's a straight up helicopter mum. Like, let's just put it at that and leave it at that.
No, all the cops will come out, and they'll dust them off because the Queensland coppers, they'll just have their like swatches of different colours, and basically the darker it gets, the more likely you are to get picked up on your curfew.
A helicopter mum that unironically listens to 96.5 Family FM in Queensland.
Because her and the daughter, they get told they're sisters all the time. You know what I mean? Like people just can't believe we're not sisters. That's exactly the type of mum Dem Frecklington is.
Yikes. Basically, the point was New Zealand, for them to earn such a majority, they don't even need to make a minority because pretty much every government in New Zealand is a minority.
Greens. Yeah. So anything they do for the Greens over there is like they're just being nice to them.
Yeah.
But the Greens still got 10, 15 seats over there. It was big.
So Greens got 10. ACT, which is kind of like centre-ish, got 10 as well, but Nat's got completely destroyed. So yeah,
which was always going to happen. Is it ACT? Is that Winston Peters' part? Because they don't even need Winston Peters anymore.
Winston Peters gone for good. Like New Zealand first got completely knocked out. ACT, I think, went from 2 or 3 seats up to 10, same as the Greens, which is mental. That's such a big shift for them. And I think there was 1 seat from the Maori Party that got in as well. So that's their representation there. But yeah, the Greens in Australia obviously push for games quite a fair bit. I'm not sure if they do in New Zealand quite as much, but if New Zealand got such a big injection of money from the games industry, that would incentivize them to continue making policy in favor of game devs, and then that would probably influence Australian policy in some to some degree, maybe Victorian policy further. But yeah, that is the news of this week. Stick with us. We got more video game goodness coming up in just a sec. Hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. You might also be joining us via C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts. I'm Cringe, and I'm here with Jason and Kart. Hello. You've both been playing Monster Hunter for a very, very long time. Monster Hunter World came out a while ago. I feel like it was in 2017. I remember
2.5 years ago.
I guess,
2018 January.
Oh yeah, it was because it was RE. Right.
No.
EB Expo, and I demoed Monster Hunter, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And Kat was like, it's okay, take your time. And I needed it. But Monster Hunter World has been out since, December 2017. I think that's the Japanese release date then. It has gotten a number of expansions. It has gotten Frost, what are they called? Iceborne, and then the most recent one.
So Iceborne is the main one. So may I, Jack?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so main game comes out, and they've released a bunch of monsters and stuff since. They ended basically the base game with, I'm pretty sure Kulve Taroth was HR, Cardi? I'm nearly certain Kulve Taroth was HR.
There is a high rank variant of Kulve.
Yeah. So so that was kind of the last big thing. And then they announced pretty reasonably early they were going to do Iceborne, which was going to be the one big patch, which was going to be the G rank patch. It's what kind of what master rank is after you go low rank, high rank, master rank. And master rank is basically end game. They'll start bringing out all the fan favorites. They'll start bringing out all these events. They'll start bringing out all this. And the last monster just came out maybe 3 weeks ago, Fatalis. And then they did one more small update, which was they gave Arch-Tempered Valk. I'm pretty sure is the latest one. And so that's the end of Monster Hunter World ongoing support outside of rotating events, outside of, hey, this random events back, would you like to play it kind of thing.
So that's the main big content chunks.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So they announced Monster Hunter Rise for the Switch, so they've gone back to the portable. So while they had the release of Monster Hunter World, not long after that they released Generations on Switch, wasn't it, Cardi?
It was so on Switch there was Generations Ultimate, which is an upgraded port of the 3DS.
Yeah.
The last 3DS release. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was what you would say is the traditional Monster Hunter experience. Like it's more traditional than Monster Hunter World, because the one thing Monster Hunter World had going for it was the fact that because it was on these next gen consoles at the time, because it was on these powerhouses compared to the usual handhelds, 3DSs and stuff like that.
PSP.
It was on. Yeah. I mean, but Vita and PSP always had a reasonably strong Monster Hunter community anyway, but because you had this thing, a lot of the limitations of the hardware are gone. So one thing the Monster Hunter used to do was when you went from, say, Zone 1 to Zone 2, there was like an animation or like a loading screen to go between the two, and then you're in Zone 2. So you could have like a monster flee from Zone 1 to Zone 12, and usually there's a short way there. So it's like, cool, if we go left here, we cut to 6, and then we cut through there to 12. And so you don't have to go through 12 individual load screens. But you could get knocked back through that. You could walk in, get knocked back through that, and then you have to go through the loading phase again. Monster Hunter World did away with that. Basically, each map was, all the individual sections were connected. You could still use the map to find your spot, but there were so many quality of life upgrades that even as clunky as it still ended up being, the quality of life upgrades, at least for me, Cardi, and maybe it's different for you, make it hard for me to play Generations Unlimited now. I like going back and having to deal with some of those things. I can't do it. It just really grates on me having to do that.
At least from the perspective of mechanical things as well, like being able to kind of work a little bit better vertically and horizontally, jumping around and also like kind of going through all the searching for local fauna, the map, and all that sort of stuff. The way you just move around the map in general, like vaulting over stuff, everything just all is very seamless, very great. Especially when you're also utilizing and using, I guess, verticality as leverage in combat, jumping off, mounting, all that sort of stuff, all works incredibly well in World. But if we're going to be talking about the perspective of, I guess, user friendliness, even at least from having training grounds where you can train using combos and getting the most out of your weapons and, going the most optimized routes. You also had new additions. Like I think one of the major one was... Actually, no, I think item loadouts were introduced in Monster Hunter 3 or 4 or something, but there was a lot of other loadouts that you could add. And even the radial dial as well is probably the one big one that that is really hard to come back from, because obviously on the 3DS you could use your touchscreen, you could program it to operate using items. But it was very limited as to what you could do with it. And there was other options and other ways that you could use the touchscreen. So compared to a radial dial where you can just pick up and choose like 4 different programmable shortcuts and you can use it to your liking, you can add emotes, you can add items, you can add consumables and all that sort of stuff.
Crafting,
as well. Like all that stuff is not in previous versions of the game. So I find it interesting that a lot of purists are very against World for that reason. Like they accused Capcom of watering down the game, but if anything, they've made it easier over what has always been an intrinsically difficult and complex game to understand. As Jack said before, he was like, "Oh, I have no idea what this game is about," and it's like, well, World is probably the perfect place to start. As unironically, as the most like serious tone I can possibly use, like it really is a game that fixes a lot of the quirk and the jank of the previous games.
Yeah, and it's got to be said that when it first came out, like you can see it with the way dealing with a lot of stuff from low and high rank, right? So, this is considered this, and this is considered this, and this is considered. So you have to go to 3 different menus. So there's still a lot of clutter. Iceborne did a better job of that. So Iceborne, when it got announced, it made it a bit more straightforward when doing that kind of thing. It took away some of the subcategories you had to go through to access certain things. It added the clutch claw. I recently started playing it again on Xbox with some of the guys from Discord, and the first thing I noticed was like, I can't clutch claw. I can't slam them into walls. I can't tenderize them. I can't do all these things.
Clutch claw changes a lot of the fundamentals of the game.
Absolutely.
Iceborne, it feels like a completely different game to a degree, where you have a lot more options at play. Where
and it also adds moves to all the weapons as well. So
that's also very true as well. So there's a lot of things you can do in that regard, and playing the base game really just goes to show that. Even when you go to play Iceborne and you've got the clutch claw and the game gives you all the keys to the castle, even like vanilla World still feels like a world away. No pun intended. But it really is just goes to show just how they've managed to, I guess, streamline a lot of the more frustrating parts about Monster Hunter, and then the expansion. They could have waited for a sequel, but they decided not to. They're like, we're going to improve upon this and we're going to kick ass at it, and they did. They succeeded.
So, and because that is the thing, like if you have a look at Rise, it looks more like a handheld Monster Hunter game, and now we have that real distinction in that sense. It like a lot of the things it looks like it does remind you of how Generations handled stuff, but it seems like a lot of those loading screens in between are gone and stuff, like just because of the power, the relative power of the Switch, and it's gone a completely different route. So the basic story of Monster Hunter World is that you're in the new world, you see all these elder dragons, as they call them, and all these like lumbering beasts heading towards this one spot. You're trying to find out why. You're trying to find out all like what is causing all this to happen, and then Iceborne adds on to the story with like a different disruption happens and blah 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 blah. With Rise, it's 100% feudal Japan. Like nearly every weapon they've shown so far, Cardi, I don't know if there's been any more, but it looks like feudal Japan. That's 100% the vibe they're going for.
The setting's very much like, very, very mountainous and hilly, and a lot of the architecture of the houses. Like it does really feel like it's channeling like almost like a spiritual spin-off or a sequel to Monster Hunter 3, as well as even Tokiden as well. Tokiden really
for sure,
went hard on that.
Good.
Like it was straight up feudal Japan. You fought Oni, for example.
Yeah, so. And so obviously one of the new monsters looks like a Kappa and stuff like that. So returning to Switch almost feels like a return to like a comfortable place for them, because it's most people remember Monster Hunter because of 3DS. That for a long time was its playground. Even despite all the other versions. So I don't know. I still think even if you were to come into this game fresh, like I said, the guys on the Xbox are playing it not necessarily for the first time, like they've played previous Monster Hunters and they've dabbled with this one, but coming in reasonably fresh, and yet Cardi's nearly level 100 MR. I've beaten Fatalis
for the second time.
Yeah, we're late game. Like we're what you would consider super late game. You know what I mean? So like we're at that final stretch, and so having these new players come along and play, it still incentivizes that. So what they're doing at the moment for a lot of the costume armor is that if you help out low rank and high rank SOS flares, so you can send an SOS flare on this game, and basically if anyone's searching by SOS flare, they'll get it'll come up in their list of, you want to help this person gets this monster, this fight, blah blah blah, and you go into that SOS flare and you help them out. So it's incentivizing high rank and MR people to come in and help low rank people to do it. But even on top of that, like most seasoned hunters will be happy to kind of do it. Like for me, I've been using it as a chance. Like the clip you're showing is me using Hammer, and that's on my main file. I only started using Hammer 4 weeks ago on my other file, and then I just got the feel for it. I'm like, this is cool. Like I'm enjoying this. So now my fun weapon is Hammer, but it's not my main weapon. So like when we did Fatalis, for example, I was Sword and Shield, and if I'm going full support build, I'm Sword and Shield, but I've got a damage build for it, and I've got a support build for it, and then I've also got a decent Lance build, and now I've got a decent Hammer build. So I've got all these builds and all these things. So the ability for me to go back and play kind of just for fun with these guys, like playing against these low rank monsters where they don't necessarily do every spell that the MR and but every move that the MR and the HR versions do. It's been nice. Like it's been nice going back and going, man, I remember when I was scared of fighting Anjanath, and now I just run into him with a hammer and just go bonk.
There's enough variation there, and also that the whole attitude of Monster Hunter, or at least this is what I hope should be, is that it does, just because of its PvE nature, is that it cultivates a sense of community. And the great way about how the game works is that everyone who gets involved, no matter how long you've been playing the game for, will get rewarded to some degree, whether it be you get material to create layered weapons, which is basically like glamours if you've played MMOs, and just parts for your weapon in general. So even if you were being accused of carrying a bunch of people, even if it's someone you haven't even known, you can use SOS flares to just go to completely different servers and help people out. As long as someone's hunting that monster, you can go and search for them by monster or search for them by rank or that kind of stuff. So
I will say that as well, Cardi. You touched on it there, but I'll follow it up. The Monster Hunter community has always been known for being a little bit elitist, and when I say a little bit, I mean a fucking lot elitist, right? And I think World, that's not quite as prevalent as it used to be. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still some people who hinge their self-worth on it, and so you can still find the occasional toxic person, but I find the community for World is less prone to those same things that the earlier communities tended to have. And maybe that's just an observation from what was basically the outside for the previous games, but I don't get the same elitism when you're talking to people about Monster Hunter World.
I think you're on the money. You're onto something there, because I think obviously with the nature of World, where a lot of people have, let's be honest, a good majority of people who are playing World are playing their very first Monster Hunter game, or at least getting involved in their very first Monster Hunter game. I know you're involved, you're included in that group. So they don't really have that much of that kind of purist history behind that at all. And admittedly, there is a certain person on YouTube who has a sizable amount of subscribers who is a Monster Hunter nut who has that same kind of attitude. And it's a really bad attitude to kind of impart on the community, because again, that's just telling people that, if you've played like the old Monster Hunters, you're allowed. You feel justified in that opinion. And I don't think that you should. Like I've been playing Monster Hunter ever since Freedom 2 on the PSP. And I'm more than happy to go out there and say, I don't think I'd be able to revisit it. Even on grounds of nostalgia, just based on how much World has done to just streamline everything and make it a far more enjoyable experience, I don't think I'd ever be able to go back to it. And I think you're on the money in that sense, where I think a lot of people are holding on to that. It's the same thing with Persona fans as well. Like, I have my hang-ups with Persona 5, and I do feel that the older games are better in terms of just thematic elements, but you think about it, it's like Persona 5 is a game that's easy to play. It's gotten a much bigger audience. It came out at the right time, at the right place. And the same thing happens with Monster Hunter as well. It's like, obviously these games will eventually grow in popularity, and next thing you know, it's Capcom's biggest selling game, and you're going to get those kinds of situations where there's less elitists in that game too.
Yeah, so Capcom's a well-known developer. You know what I mean? Like they're known enough throughout the communities, whether that's because of Street Fighter, whether that's because of whatever, that enough people at least know Capcom. You know what I mean? Like they may not necessarily be up to date with what's the latest Resident Evil. They may not be up to date with what's the latest Devil May Cry, but they know Capcom. They know Street Fighter. It's enough of a household name. Keep in mind that Monster Hunter is easily, and it's not even close, their highest selling game. It's 12, 13 million, like some ridiculous number. So keep in mind that a success for them previously, 500,000 to a million, maybe 2 million, was a roaring success for Capcom. They were stoked with that. 12 million copies of this game, right? So, to me, it shows how it's the rise of, I forget old mate's name, but he's the young fella who's taken over basically all of Capcom at the moment. And this was his baby. Yeah, something like that. And this was his baby, and this was kind of his chance to prove that Capcom can come into the new era and bring new ideas and bring new whatever. Fuck, he nailed it. Like, there's just everything about, even the clunky bits of this game aren't that clunky, and everything about what it's tried to do. And again, at the start, especially, the ongoing stream joke for us is Wolfie hates going to Astera, and Astera's awfully laid out. Like, where you start in the main kind of lobby world, the hub world, it's just awfully laid out. So you'll end up, you have to go all the way up either one set of stairs to go to the canteen, or one set of stairs to go to the workshop, the smithy. And it's just such a pain in the ass. Like, it's just so awful to actually have to do, because it's so all over the place. Then Saliana has all those places within a short sprint. Literally you could do one run and you've gone to all the places you need to go to within 2 minutes.
Canteens right next to the quest giver if you're not in the gathering hall, and
or you just go to the gathering hub, and even the gathering hub is better laid out. And so if there's anything that shows you the progress the game made from when it launched, and it was still something of a unique experiment to them, and a first try at that kind of game, to where Iceborne ended up. I think even the gathering hubs, the main areas, Astera versus Saliana, is perhaps the best comparison one can make from one game to the next. But basically, I still think it's still worth it. If you look at it, you go, it's over. They're not supporting it anymore. But you're like, I want to get into the series before Rise. I mean, Rise is still 6 months off, Cardi. I think it's March or something.
Still a long way away.
Yeah. So you got 6 months. I mean, I rushed it. And granted, I was playing on stream where I did kind of slow down a little bit. I reckon if you rush it, you still get 150 hours out of it. easily, and that's really without you pushing for level 100 MR. That's for you pushing for all these milestones.
I'm close to 500 hours all up on World on 2 different platforms, and I know people on my friends list that are pushing about 800 hours.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get a lot out of it. Like if you're talking about value proposition, like World is up there.
I think Trig's in 600. I'm on 4 and a bit now. I just hit 300 the other day on thing. Look, I don't know. There's so much game to play, and the thing with it as well is, as much as it is about the grind, it is about you getting better. You will genuinely notice yourself getting better at this video game, and the kind of the customization, as clunky and as really, like, the thing with the game is, people talk about Dark Souls and stuff when they're talking about like these kind of honest interpretations of action gameplay, and Monster Hunter to me still has that. It's still primarily hit monster, do damage, do whatever, but then there's layers that they've added on to change that, to change what you focus on. So okay, so this monster's weak to stun, let's get a weapon that's good at stunning them, let's hit it in the head, let's stun it, knock it over, get more damage, get it done quicker. There's ones where it's like, cool, well, we need to get wing breaks or whatever to get the parts that we need to build the new weapons that we need to do. So the grind it's not just go kill 10 boars, right? The grind is actually a little bit more gacha than that. It's like, cool, you need 1 Raytheon gem or 1 Raytheon mantle to get the armor that you need. It's good luck. Go kill some Raytheon, because it's a random chance. You know what I mean? And so once you hit late game, you can start making them and stuff like that. But early game, it's still go kill this monster, which is still an interesting, fun fight. There's things to do. It's not just go kill 500 boars over and over again. It's, hey, here's these monsters. You might lose. Like, especially when you start talking Rajang and you start talking these like pain in the ass monsters, you can still just get wiped. Like, one hit will wipe 2 people. And it's like, okay, cool. So we've just gone from comfortable, he's pretty close to death, blah, blah, bang, he just supers you. And it's like, well, shit, now we've got 1 death left before we're all done. And so the game, even in and of itself, even in its grind, has some interesting, like, fun elements to it.
It's got a good loop. It's enough variables out there to keep it fresh. And
a great gameplay loop is good way to put it.
I mean, you obviously start off with fighting a monster, learning its patterns, learning its animations, and all that sort of stuff, finding exploits. But then after that, as you mentioned before, like if you're looking for a particular part or something like that, you got to also start capturing the monster or start gaining knowledge of whether or not you can do wing breaks, you can cut off its tail, you can do all sorts of things. So yeah, again, like there's a lot of layers to it that eventually start to unravel the more you play it. And then I think that definitely the end game is like you just being more efficient at killing that monster. I mean, you've seen all those YouTube videos of like, we'll kill a Nergigante in like 2 minutes. Yeah. And that takes a lot of practice. That's a lot of hours of practice to get to that point. So the game definitely encourages you going back and just constantly organically learning these new things, these new tricks and all that sort of stuff. And its gameplay loop is incredibly satisfying.
Cool. So Monster Hunter World, along with its 2 expansions, has been out for a while. When was the most recent expansion out?
There's only 1 expansion, it's Iceborne, but there's been a lot of like post-release
monster. Yeah.
There's been a lot of post-release updates since then that have been for free.
New monster was mid-September, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, it was start of October, wasn't it?
Start of October.
Yeah,
end of September. It was like 31st of September.
Was the Fatalis drop. Yeah.
Cool. And then Monster Hunter Rise is coming out March next year. So even if you're looking forward to Rise, you're going to get a kick out of World, even if you've not played a Monster Hunter game.
Agreed. Absolutely. And it's on Game Pass, so you can try it out for free.
Good stuff. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV. Stick around. We've got more video game goodness coming up in a sec. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. You might be joining via C31, C44, or Apple or Spotify podcasts. I'm Cringe, here with Kart and Jason. And when you guys aren't playing Monster Hunter, which will be a lot over the coming months, now that you've really gotten through a lot of the late game content, you've been playing a lot of indie games, and we're slowly getting through both your reviews. What is Going Under, Kart? Please tell me.
So Going Under is a indie game that's released by the studio Aggro Crab and was published by Team 17. This dropped around about, I'd say, almost a month ago. So it's a roguelite adventure about a fresh, wide-eyed intern named Jacqueline who arrives on her first day at a beverage company called Fizzle. Now, before the first stand-up meeting of the day can even begin, Jacqueline's first task is that she's ordered to clean up remnants of defunct companies that lay several floors underground from her offices. And from there, she quickly learns that these companies sink below the surface of the earth when they go bankrupt. And with their former employees, they turn into monsters and are forced to essentially aimlessly roam around the offices forever and ever. Essentially for eternity. And from there, Jacqueline investigates these companies to better understand their and also her current company's coexistence.
So what is that? That is the setting, the sort of backstory of the game. It brings you up to speed. Looking at gameplay of it, it looks to be more of a focus on gameplay through the rest of the game. Is there much of an ongoing plot, or is it more just a basis for the gameplay to exist?
Yeah, like there is a bit of a plot. There's a good amount of, I guess, not necessarily character development, but there's a lot of dialogue heavy sequences that you do play in the overworld. So you start off in a hub world, basically in the company Fizzle. You're in the offices and you speak to all of your colleagues. You know, you've got like the marketing executive who's just all bright and bubbly all the time. You've got the secretary of the company at the reception who's all, you know, a bit airheaded, but like, you know, she's also kind of strangely airheaded, but also on top of things. And you've also got the very surly, belligerent IT manager as well. Not speaking from experience, but there's a little bit of that too. So every character kind of is very personable. And I got to say, like, the first thing you'll notice is that the presentation is absolutely wonderful. Like, you know, the UI design is really simple. It's nice. There's the dungeons that you explore are also very varied. They've got their own themes. The 2D art looks absolutely great, which we'll find out a little bit later on. Just in the little picture there. And some of the 3D models of the characters and enemies, they're kind of like nice and goofy enough, and they look like a neat cross between like Muppets and the inflatable tube men that you see at used car lots.
I was going to say Keita Takahashi. I was going to say pure Watam shit. Yeah,
a little bit of Watam, a little bit of like almost like Loco Roco-y kind of.
Yeah.
Nobi Boy, that kind of stuff. So it really has like its vision in terms of presentation. It's right there. They knew exactly what they were doing. And like its penchant for minimalist design, it kind of is in itself like a tongue-in-cheek mockery of the many like infographics and visuals that you see associated with tech startups and like crowdfunding pitches and like those PowerPoint presentations in meetings that you go to that really should have just been emails. So like you definitely can see that it is just a big wide satire of just late stage capitalism in general, but also just kind of just the main I guess toxic workplace culture and
just corporate hell. Absolutely.
Just corporate hell. Yeah. Again, like going under, it's that metaphor for like, you know, you're essentially going down into hell to like just completely exercise monsters and demons. And it really nails the sardonic nature of its humor without like kind of stretching it too thin. Like some other games I noticed are starting to kind of get into this whole kind of, you know, late stage capitalism is evil, but they're not, they don't seem to kind of have a bit of nuance in it, but where I feel that Going Under definitely nails that in terms of it being a dungeon crawler mechanically, but also like just thematically, it's all bright, bubbly, and fun, but there's an underlying sense of dread there that you only figure out later on until you start like keep playing the game and you keep, you know, once you're about 5 hours in, you start to notice like things aren't quite what they seem.
It seems like the satire RPG is like a whole genre now. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Not that obviously, like I would say the first one of those, you know, was Earthbound, but we had was it Moon the other day you were talking about? You know, we've had obviously Undertale and even Doki Doki to an extent.
Sega Gaga as well.
Yeah, these kind of games that are like do their subversion. You know, like just the way they do their subversion isn't that over the top, edgy kind of style. It seems like it's a little bit more kind of, I don't know. It's interesting to see that it's suddenly become such a thing that I'm noticing more and more that these games are starting to appear on Steam and all these different platforms.
Yeah, and like we are getting a bit of that. Like this is starting to become kind of a renaissance of things as well. You've got a lot of games that have done that in the past, like, you know, Lucas Pope with Papers, Please and Return of the Obra Dinn, where it's just kind of like it's commenting on the chaotic yet cathartic sense of bureaucracy, and a lot of these games like this and Yuppie Psycho take that in stride. But the good thing about this game is that it really kind of nails in the sense of there's a good variety of meme culture references that are pretty significant to its game mechanics and its setting. You know, slight jabs at millennial work ethic and corporate sociopathy. But the important part here is that there's a good balance of gags, and most of them land pretty well for the most part, and they refrain from being too self-congratulatory or too self-aware, to the point where it starts to remind me a lot of like if you've watched if you've watched like Office Space, or if you've watched Arrested Development, or if you've played the Mario and Luigi games in particular, like that kind of sense of humor, it's kind of like it's earned. The gags are actually pretty funny as well, and it's not trying too hard, or it doesn't feel like it's trying too hard.
So the gameplay, you mentioned that it's a dungeon crawler, but from the footage that I'm looking at, it seems like it's not so much like the adventure, the trying to explore the area isn't so much the focus as just flat out combat, because it was fairly small, I guess, fighting quarters that you were in some of the video I was seeing earlier. Is that sort of the case?
Yeah, if we're gonna draw comparisons, I think I would say that it's a good mix of a little bit of Binding of Isaac, which you've got like, you jump in between rooms, and you've got like you've got your vendors that are in particular floors and stuff like that, and you keep making your way down to the bottom, and the rooms are very claustrophobic. That some of them are like wide and narrow, so you still got to kind of keep your hopes up, keep your guard up. Sorry.
Yeah.
And also it's a little bit of Dead Rising as well, where all of your weaponry in the game you need to actually pick up and procure on site. So you got to go in, and as soon as you see an enemy, and if you see like an office chair right next to you or a keyboard, you got to grab that straight away and start beating the hell out of that monster with a keyboard. And there's funny weapons as well. Like, sometimes you'll get like decent ones, like a blade or something like that, like a sword, and you're like, okay, fair enough. But then you have like crazy, or like a mace or something like that, and then you get maniacal ones, like you get a keyboard, you get a gigantic thumbtack that's a pin, and or even like products of like of previous tech startups and stuff like that. So it really is kind of just makes fun of itself, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think it's really bolstered by the way it presents itself and its writing and how good that is. But yeah, for the most part, it is with the dungeon crawling aspect, you do come into contact with certain characters. You can buy skills off them. You can buy curses, which allow you to get a better yield in terms of what you get in your dungeons through currency, through like certain weapons and loadouts and all that sort of stuff. So there is a bit of mix and matching, which is great. And it does encourage a little bit of experimentation in terms of just the general gameplay loop of starting in the hub, grabbing as many side quests as you can from the characters within your office, and then going down and just like, oh, can you do this for me? And there's like one particular dungeon which is based around mining Bitcoin, and you're essentially in a mining cave. And like there'll be certain people, like people in the IT sector, will ask you if you want to mine some Bitcoin, and then give a certain amount back to them, and they potentially may give you a good weapon, or they might give you a good skill or something you can use to equip. So its gameplay loop is pretty satisfying. The unfortunate part though is that actually, no, there's one other positive thing I'd like to actually say as well. It doesn't particularly affect me in any way, but there's optional assist features, which has been popularized by games like The Last of Us 2, where it allows players who aren't particularly too seasoned with roguelikes, because most of them are pretty unrelenting in their difficulty, right? Like, telling someone to jump into a game of Rogue Legacy or The Binding of Isaac is absolutely just bonkers. You don't know what's Spelunky. Or Spelunky, for example, or Lama Lana or something. So the game allows you to kind of give yourself a bit more health. You give yourself a couple more hearts if you're not too seasoned with it. You can get your dodge to have more iframes than usual, or allow for better weapon longevity, so they can last a bit longer. So that way it allows you to get accustomed to the game, and you can switch it on and off like as soon as you want. You can just jump out of the game, turn the assists on, turn the assists off, depending if things get a bit too difficult or hard, and the game's not going to slight you for it. Which I find great. The unfortunate part I find about it is that the game is incredibly short. Now that doesn't seem particularly too bad, because it's not really a problem that's inherently wrong with the game, because it's a bit of an anomaly compared to like the other genre, like to the genre of roguelikes in general, because it's really tough to find yourself in this already pretty niche genre of video games that are lauded for their endless longevity and versatility and design. I know a few people who have racked up 200 to 300 hours in Binding of Isaac alone. And the first thing you're going to be missing as well is that its story progression, given how hilarious and great the writing is and the characters are, it all ends way too quickly. And like you could probably get you can stretch it out for maybe about 10 hours maximum, I'd say, before you start to kind of feel a bit, okay, I need a bit more than this. And, it's a bit of a shame because it's like there's so many good characters, there's great writing, and I wanted more of it. So if I'm greedy for that, then guilty as charged. From a gameplay perspective, there's only like 3 whole dungeons in the game on release. And that can be completed around about, the 5-hour mark, and then you just do more instances of it at the end. So it all depends on how keen you are on repeating content. So, yeah.
Does it leave space well for DLC? Like, is, I guess, the story and the plot wrapped up in such a way that it seems rushed, or that they just kind of ran out of ideas? And in the case of them running out of ideas, it's like, cool, we just end up adding DLC, adding content to a post-launch. Or do you think that they had to be like, get this stuff out right now?
Well, that's actually one of the good points you bring up as well, because they've already released the post-release post-launch roadmap. And they did say that they're going to be adding new skills, new curses, new weapons, cosmetics that you can buy with in-game currency in the store. And they said that a new dungeon should come out in the next couple of content patches. So they did say that it's like, there's going to be more content out there and we're going to slowly trickle it out. But I'd say that the main story arc kind of wraps up in a well enough way that it's like, it's fine. And then additional dungeons, because the game plays good enough, so you can kind of get away with it. And you're like, cool, I'll buy for more dungeons. But if there's actual like story expansions where you play as different characters and they have their own arcs, or you play as the actual characters in the hub, I'd be all for it. But it just sucks because it's like you've got this great world and it's fully realized, and it feels like it's not wasted potential, but it's just like, I want more of a good thing. Like you get a slice of chocolate cake, and it's a tiny slice of chocolate cake, but you want the whole cake.
I just want to eat the whole cake.
I just want the whole cake, man. I want to be that kid in Matilda. I want that whole cake.
That's absolutely the first place my mind went as well. Going Under is available now on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. You can look forward to a bunch of post-release content if you decide to pick it up as well. Thank you for that review. And that actually brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thanks for joining us. If you want more social media, New Game Plus goodness in your life, why wouldn't you? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram /New Game Plus TV, on YouTube, youtube.com/NewGamePlusTV. On Twitch, we broadcast the show live every Thursday night around 8 p.m. If you're joining us on TV, you're actually missing out on a massive chunk of content. You're watching a 25-minute episode when the show actually ran for about an hour and a half. Twitch.tv/NewGamePlusTV, and the website is newgameplus.tv. Kart and Jason, thank you for joining me this week, and we'll catch you guys next time.